Doors are closing, so that means we should probably get started. Good morning. Oh, come on, you can't all be as jet-lagged and hungover as you sound. Good morning, welcome to Summit. How you guys doing? Good. So, welcome. I'm Thomas Rayner, and I'm going to teach you about running compiled PowerShell Cmdlets in a language you may have heard of called CSharp. Who's written anything in CSharp before? Some hands go up? Okay, great. Find another. No, I'm just kidding. Who's written, of the hands that didn't go up, who's written like advanced functions in PowerShell, stuff that takes parameters, commandlet binding? Good. All right, anybody not in any of the groups that just put their hands up? Wow. You guys might know more than me. But I'm up here talking, so you're going to listen to me. I'm a senior security service engineer. I work for a small company called Microsoft that's in the area. Make stuff like PowerShell. You may have heard of it. And let's keep going. Are you in the right room? So what are we doing? What is this session actually? Like, you read the abstract, you've read the title, you're in the room, you're stuck here, they closed the doors. What are we actually doing? This is just an introduction to PowerShell Cmdlets in C#. So if you've written other stuff in C#, this is specifically just PowerShell Cmdlets. We're going to go through 4, 5 if we have time, but definitely 4 relatable examples, simple examples. These are going to be stuff that even I can bang out on a keyboard in front of a room full of people. So we're not going to give you code that, oh, you're going to take this back to work and you're going to implement it right away and it's going to change your life. No. We're just going to give you some ideas, some examples, some building blocks, some things that you can use to build your own knowledge from here. This is a launch pad, so to speak. We're doing it in .NET Core, which it's not really going to make a big difference to what we're doing. Everything is going to be so simple that you're not going to really see a lot of the .NET Core stuff in play. And we're going to have a ton of fun, right? First thing in the morning, first day of real sessions. We're going to just have a blast. But first, what is this not? This is not best practices, right? Like, this is not a session on how you should organize your project. This is not a session on like what you really need to do to make it awesome. Like I said, this is a launch pad to help you learn more. This is not necessarily even good practices. Some of the stuff that we're going to show you is, like, especially if you've been around the block in C#, is not going to be the most performant solution. It's not going to be the most fewest lines of code or anything like that. We're in here, again, just to kind of get you familiarized, show you how some stuff works, and see where you take it from there. This is not an intro to C#. However, everybody in the room seems like they're pretty comfortable with PowerShell and syntax like that. Worked with an interpreted .NET language, it stands to reason you could pick up a compiled .NET language pretty quickly. So I'm not really worried about some of this stuff going over anyone's head. We're going to explain stuff as we go, so hopefully everyone will be able to keep up. And this is not a comparison of C# and PowerShell, except for one little section that I'll point out. This is really just not to tell you you should do this in C#, you should do this in PowerShell. It's to give you another option, right? Don and Jeffrey talked yesterday a lot about adding screwdrivers to your tool belt. And so PowerShell is one screwdriver, C# is another. If you want to be able to tackle more scenarios, it's worth it to you to add tools to your tool belt. Also, if you're not investing in yourself, if you're not learning about new things, then what are you doing? You must be a little bored. And one more thing, I didn't make a slide for it. This is not easy, right? They're straightforward demos, but nothing that any of you guys do in your day-to-day work is easy. Nothing is just do this. Everything we do is at least a degree of difficulty harder than the average person's going to want to tackle, right? Like, it's just a pet peeve when people say, oh, it's so easy, you just do this. Well, just doing this implies maybe years of prerequisite knowledge. So we're going through simple examples in terms of like how far the rabbit hole really goes. But it's not just like, oh, it's so easy, anyone can do it, anyone can get started. And I want to show you how accessible it is. But make no mistake about it, like, none of this is just like pick it up, any random person off the street's going to do it, right? And these are not perfect demos, so kind of like I was touching on the best practices, good practices thing. Hopefully everything goes smoothly. So let's get one thing out of the way. If you write code, you're a dev. Take a picture of this slide, tweet it, whatever. If you write code, you're a dev. And if you don't believe it, you're wrong, and I'll fight you after this session. Okay? Like, if you touch infrastructure, you're doing ops work, you're an operator. If you're doing dev work, you're a dev. If you're doing CI/CD work, you're a CI/CD person. It may not be your job title. Your job title might be technology analyst or systems administrator or junior dishwasher. But if you're doing development work, you're a developer. That's why I'm wearing my dev shirt. Dev.to is a social site for developers and stuff. I'm a big fan of it. But again, if you write code, you're a dev. And so nobody in here should think, oh, all I write is PowerShell. I'm not a real dev. I just noodle around in the console until I make stuff work, and then I wrap it in a script and deploy it to prod. It's like, it might not be great development work. You might not be a rock star turbo ninja guru developer or whatever the latest Silicon Valley titles are, but you're a dev. You write code, you're a dev. That's it, period. So let's talk about why. Why are we doing this? Like, why? What are some use cases for what I'm about to teach you, right? Like, what is the actual plan here? You could, and I'm not saying this is the best way to do this, but you could write compiled cmdlets in C# to prevent users from being able to edit your scripts and modules that you deploy to their workstations or deploy to a place that they can read and write them. Out of this, you get out of doing compiled cmdlets with C#, you get a DLL that you can ship around. And I don't know if you've tried opening one of those in a text editor lately. It's not very easy. This is not a replacement for making sure you don't put secrets in your code, because like that's still a bad practice, no matter what language you're writing it in, right? But this is a replacement for a power user who likes to open it and edit it and then run your script even though they're not supposed to run it. Like maybe code signing would be a good thing to check into, but this is one option if you can't get the other options in. There's a few things that genuinely work better in C# than in PowerShell. I know I said this isn't a comparison of C# and PowerShell, but like a little bit you can't help but look at it, right? Like link, I'll show you if we have time. Asynchronous operations, multi-threading. Who's trying to multi-thread a PowerShell script? Put up your hand. Anyone written like a GUI that they didn't want to freeze? Anybody had like, I want to do this on 50 servers and it takes an hour and a half to run, and you didn't want it to take 50 times 1.5 to run. You wanted it just to run, right? Multi-threading, in my opinion, is much more straightforward in C# than it is in PowerShell. There are some great community resources around wrapping run spaces and PowerShell jobs and stuff like that. But there's stuff that's native that you don't have to pull a dependency, an external dependency on to do it more elegantly in C#. Working with C# code written by others, we'll show you making a contribution to a small project you might be familiar with. We'll show you working with like a DLL that your dev team sent you. And yeah, you could do some of this in PowerShell. If your dev team just gives you a DLL, you could work around it and just add types and do things like that. But maybe you want to do it in PowerShell instead because you want to challenge yourself. Or there's another reason that I haven't thought of yet. And contributing to other projects. I kind of mentioned that in the working with C# code written by others. There's a lot of C# stuff on GitHub. There's a lot of C# in PowerShell stuff on GitHub or other public repositories. And if you want to play, then you got to write it in the same language, right? If you want to write a custom PS Script Analyzer rule that you want shipped in the actual product, PS Script Analyzer lets you write PSD1s or PSM1s and use those locally. But if you want them to be part of the core PSSA, then they need to be in C#. And so here we go. And most importantly, why not, man? Like, why not challenge yourself and try something new? It's my opinion that PowerShell is a gateway language for traditional sysadmins and operators and people with those types of job titles to get into more and more development work, right? PowerShell is, in my opinion, really easy to pick up or really straightforward to pick up. I gotta stop saying easy. Nothing is easy. But it's one of the more friendly languages to get started with. Everything's very verbose. It's not super terse like a language like Bash or something is, or a lot of the Linux executables. It's .NET. So if you get very familiar with PowerShell, it lends itself, it's a very natural path into learning about C#. and learning about other languages that that work in .NET. It's also object-oriented, so if you want to start looking at other object-oriented languages that aren't all about .NET, then it's a very natural gateway into doing work like that as well. And so PowerShell is a gateway language. You start, you kind of noodle around in the console, you're like hitting F8 all through the ISE, that's how you debug, and then, oh, it's good, save it, and then eventually you get some more development practices, you become more comfortable, you start learning more and more about PowerShell, and you go, this is great, but it does a lot for me, and I don't really love everything that it does for me. Maybe I want to have more control. I want to go into a lower level language, or I want to go even higher into a language that takes care of even more stuff for me. So why not, right? Like, you're all here, you want to learn, so let's get going. But before we get going, you'll need a couple of dependencies. The first is, you can do this in Visual Studio Code. Like, not everybody has the money or the ability to get a full-blown license of Visual Studio. Awesome if you do, MSDN, you can really do a lot with it. Visual Studio is an excellent program. But VS Code is free. And the C# extension that goes with VS Code is free. And so you can get started today for free. You'll also need the .NET Core SDK, right? Like, if you want to develop for C#, if you want to develop for .NET, then you got to have the .NET SDK. This meme, there is a blue and a green version of Visual Studio Code. Does anyone know what the difference is? Insider's Edition, that's right, I heard a few people. The blue one is just a regular stable release of Visual Studio Code. The green one is the Insider's Edition, and I highly recommend you check out the Insider's Edition because it's usually, honestly, in my experience, pretty stable, and you get newer stuff faster. Who doesn't like that? It's a little off topic, but there's also an Insider's Edition of the PowerShell extension that you can go look at. I think it's just called PowerShell-Preview. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. You can install that as well and get the new bits in the PowerShell extension faster than the public gets them also. And if it doesn't work, then you can go harass Tyler on Twitter and tell him all the things that are wrong with it. Or file a GitHub issue, I don't know. So now let's actually get started. Let's actually write some code. That's all the real slides that we kind of have here. First, one line of code to create a new class library. So this is not PowerShell. This is not C# either. .NET is a command line executable, basically, that takes arguments and does stuff to your computer. And the first one that we're running is just to create a new class library. A class library is kind of one of the fundamental C# project types. This is a template, basically, that allows you to start writing a new class library. And it takes an argument, -- name. We won't be naming our actual one this today, because it's a lie, but it's a good demo. And if you omit the -- name, it'll just create a new class library in your current directory named after your current directory. So probably good to do that in an empty directory. And it'll create that directory wherever you happen to be, and then you can change into that directory. Then, this isn't mandatory, but I like to do it. You're creating a new global JSON artifact in that class library folder that we created. This allows you to specify the .NET Core SDK version. And so last slide, I told you what you needed to get started. You need Visual Studio Code. You need .NET Core SDK. There's multiple versions of the .NET Core SDK. And if you're doing something that depends on a certain version being installed because it's a new feature, like maybe you need the WinForms stuff in there because you're writing an out-grid view replacement. Well, then you're going to be dependent on .NET Core 3. So you need to make sure that people developing for this have the right SDK. Or maybe there's a breaking change that comes in later versions of .NET Core that you don't want people bumping into, so you limit them. You do that using this global JSON. Doesn't take any or it doesn't have to take any parameters, it just kind of goes. And then rub a little PowerShell on it. Adding a package. This is retrieving the PowerShell standard.library package from NuGet, and then it's adding it to our project. And that allows us, it's kind of like importing a module, right? Like if we're just doing regular C# stuff, then we're cool. But we want to write a PowerShell cmdlet. So we need to get some more goodness in there related to PowerShell, some more commands that are related to constructing commandlets and stuff like that. There's an alternative. You can do .NET new -I PowerShell, the whole thing's on the screen. This will add a template that you can use for creating a new PowerShell module. I personally don't love it. The one that it adds is fine. So we're going to be going the other way instead of this way, but this is an option that you could use. Oh, that was handy. Install. Who's ready to do some stuff? Oh, enthusiasm. I love it first thing in the morning. Anyone still awake? All right. So let's do some stuff. All right. We're going to start with the basics. We're literally going to start with a hello world example. All right. So what do I say we need to do first? I'm just in Visual Studio Code. Everybody see that in the back? Is this, yes, thumbs up? Good, okay. So first things first, I'm in a directory. It's got some stuff staged for demos that are coming later. I'm going to do .NET, .NET, new, class lib, name. We're going to name it hi there. Okay? And it's going to work flawlessly on the conference Wi-Fi. Yay! And now if we look in our directory again, we have a hi there directory. It created that for us. We're not in the thing we created, so we'll, actually I'm going to open it in code. You guys know you could do this? -R will reuse the same window that you've got open, and this will open a folder in, in the VS Code window. So if I do that, it's going to reload Visual Studio Code, and look at me. I've got stuff. I'm in the Hi There folder. You guys who've used Visual Studio Code are familiar with this. Cool, right? I'm going to pop my terminal open here and make it a little smaller. And so what else did I say I was going to do? I'm going to add a .NET new global JSON. This is a great angle to type at with your wrists. And I'm going to do the other thing I said. I was going to rub some PowerShell on it. .NET add package PowerShell standard dot. Did I spell that right? Let's find out. No. Any package reference? Did I misspell something? Somebody yell. SSL connection could not be established. Remote certificate's invalid. I bet it's conference Wi-Fi.
If you reconnect, I was having some HTTPS problems.
Oh, were you? Yeah. Things are going great. There is a plan B, but I'm hoping we don't have to use it. Once again. Third time's lucky. We did it. Yay. All right. So that was all we need to do, right? Done. OK, short session. No, let's go to work. So this is the template that it creates. When you just say, I want a new class library, this is everything it makes for you. And we added this global JSON. All it does is tell me the version of the .NET Core SDK that I want to use. And we got other files and stuff here. Class1.cs is, raise your hand if this is a good name for a file. Raise your hand if this is a bad name for a file. There you go. Everybody got it right. So I'm going to rename it to hello world.cs. And accordingly, I'm going to rename my class to hello world. And now we're just going to start writing some CSharp. I mean, I know in my head, OK, I want to write a PowerShell commandlet. I added the PowerShell package to my project. So I'm going to make that, make all that stuff available to me as I'm writing my code. So I'm going to go using system.management.automation. Does that look familiar to anybody? System management automation? Yeah, exactly, because it's all the PowerShell stuff lives in there, right? And so that is made available to us because we did the .NET add package. I'm also going to say this class, this hello world class, that's commandlet. And this is wrapped in square brackets. You'll be able to see it easier once the highlighting goes away. And it takes a couple of arguments, and you can see them in the IntelliSense. It wants a verb, and then it's going to want a noun. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Verb and then a noun, right? And you know what? It should probably be an approved verb too, right? If only there was like a really easy way to find out what all the approved verbs were. You could like go into PowerShell and go get verb, right? You guys know you can do that, and it'll just list out all the verbs. You know why that's so easy? It's because there's actually like classes that go verbs common.get. And now it's going to be a get. I'm going to say, this is my get greeting commandlet, right? So the name of this function that I'm writing, this commandlet that I'm writing, is going to be get-greeting. And that's why it's so easy for PS Script Analyzer to get mad at you when you use a verb that's not one of the approved ones. And because this is a commandlet that I'm writing, I'm going to inherit from the PS Commandlet class. I'm sorry? Zoom in a bit, you bet. Better? That's going to do cool things here. Go away. Go away for real. Go away some more. Perfect. All right. So we're inheriting from the PS Commandlet class. If you're familiar with C#, you may have seen this before, and you know what this does. But if you haven't, this is basically saying there is another class out in the wild somewhere, probably in here if you had to guess, called PS Commandlet. And there are properties and methods, which are like functions, but they're in C#, so they're called methods, that belong to the PS Commandlet class that I would like to make available to my Hello World class. So that's what I'm saying I'm doing there. And now all that's left is to write some code or something, right? So let's go, let's make a parameter, shall we? Let's go parameter. Let's accept value from pipeline equals true. I didn't put a $sign because it's not PowerShell. And then if you're writing C# stuff, there's snippets built into Visual Studio Code. And I can go prop and then tab. And it's going to insert all that stuff. You used snippets in Visual Studio Code before, probably, in PowerShell, maybe C#. And this is going to be just a variable, effectively. It's called a property, but you can think of it like a variable that you use within your commandlet, and this is a parameter. So this is going to be a string. I'm going to call it name, and that's all I really need to do. And this get and set is C# lingo. This is an intro to C#, so you have to just trust me that it's necessary. And now think of how your PowerShell commandlets work when you write them in PowerShell, when you're writing an advanced function. After your param block, what comes next? Begin, maybe a process block if you don't want to begin. Let's write a process block, right? Because especially since we're taking value from pipeline, we should definitely have a process block, right? So how do I do that in C#? Well, I override the process block that comes with the PS commandlet part. So protected, override, void, process record. And what this is saying is there's a process record method that comes in as just by being a PS commandlet object. And I'm overriding that with my own definition of what process record is going to do. This void is just saying it doesn't return anything. Because in the C# world, it doesn't return anything. We're going to write stuff out to the PowerShell world, but we're not going to write anything out to like our C# world here. And I'm going to go var to declare a new variable and go whodat. I'm going to name it, because we're doing best practices, right? You remember I said no, not best practices, not even good practices. So I'm naming that variable that so you can keep track easy so it doesn't scroll for days. And that's going to be equal to something you can't do in PowerShell at this time is a ternary expression. I'm going to go string is null or empty name. And then it'll be world if it's empty, and it'll be name if it's not. C# people, maybe you know what I did there. PowerShell people who are seeing this for the first time, maybe you don't. This is much more terse than you're used to seeing in PowerShell. I've declared a new variable with a keyword that you don't have to use in PowerShell. You just go $whatever equals whatever. And then I've set it equal to, is this string name null or empty? Remember, that's my parameter. If it's empty, then this little question mark between the question mark and the colon gets executed. I'm going to set this equal to world. And if it's not null or empty, that means I got a value. So I'm going to set it equal to the name. So far, so good? OK. And then I'm going to make a greeting. And it's going to be equal to hello, who dat? OK? So string concatenation, right? Probably not blowing anybody's mind. Maybe you didn't know how to do it in C#, but now you know. And so this is our hello world example, right? So I want to now maybe write this out and actually say hello world. And so if there's a power, I'm going write output. Oh, that's really not working, is it? But I can go write object and give it that. This is just the argument. This is just what it's going to write out, greeting, the variable. You can put a string in there. That's cool, too. And it's going to write that out to my my output stream. I could do, there's like write verbose and write debug and other stuff you can do, too. But I don't want that. I want to write output. So I save my file. And this is it. This is our hello world. So let's actually run this. Wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't that be novel? Who's excited? OK. .NET build. That's all. It's just the one argument. And as long as I don't have syntax errors, it'll build. And if you read through this output, which is very interesting, and you should all do every time, it tells you there's a DLL here that you can import. And I'm in PowerShell here, so I can go import module. And it's in the bin directory, debug directory, net standard. And it's called hi there.dll. Because that's the name of my project. So that's the name of my module. It's the name of my namespace. Import. So far, so good. If I do a get module, I can see there's my hi there module. If I do a get command and see what's in that module, I've got to get greeting. Who wants to run it? Yeah? Get greeting. Yay! And you know what else we did? We said get greeting. Oh, we said there was a name. Oh, and it even does that. That's the ternary thing going to work here. Is it empty? Because I didn't pass it, put in world. If not, put in the name. And I also said I could do things like pass values from the pipeline. So it's taking them as parameters, right? So it's a little bit more than a regular hello world where you just hard code everything. But that is how accessible it is. We did it in just a few minutes here in front of everybody, right? Pretty neat. So we did some stuff. There's the video that you would all be watching if doing some stuff had not worked. Well, let's do some more stuff, right? Like that was, like it would be pretty anticlimactic to end now, wouldn't it? Be a lot easier for me, but that's not really why we're all here. In this next example, we're going to look at working with somebody else's code. Specifically, in the example that we're going to look at, this is really just where we have a development team, and they've given me a DLL that I want to use inside of something that I'm writing, maybe for my end users, maybe for a system I administer. And what this thing does that they gave me is it generates ephemeral, super top secret codes for access, like tokens. It's very sophisticated. I'll show you the code over lunch if we have time. It's definitely not just going to return a random GUID. But the point is, this is logic that I can't just recreate myself. This is something that's really like top end and hard for me to work with. It's just a DLL, and they said figure it out yourself. There's no PowerShell interface for it. There's no module. Maybe I could work with this thing inside of PowerShell, or I could just add it to my project in a C# environment. So I'm going to go code -r, others code, fire that up. All right, and so I'll save you the creation of the project, because you just saw it. You don't need to see it again. But I'll draw your attention to the left side here, where we've got a couple things. We've got you didn't make me.dll. Who do you think made that? It's not me. And oh, I can't even open it because it's binary or unsupported. Do you want to open it anyway? Probably not. So I want to use it inside of my otherscode.cs file that I've got here. And I've already done rub some PowerShell on it. I've already added my using statement here. I've given it a name. It's going to be get secret code. And I've left myself a very helpful, fantastically descriptive comment. This is definitely how you should track all of your work. Forget like Azure DevOps boards or like anything. This is how I prefer to do it. Not so much. How do I get my code in? How do I use this DLL? How do I reference this you didn't make me thing? Using, true, but before I do that, I need to do one thing. I need to actually make it available here. This system.management.automation wouldn't have been there if I hadn't have added that package to my project. I know I didn't show you that, but you have to just trust me. Trust me, I'm a professional. I'm a dev. Okay. So I go into my CS Proj folder. I've already added the file to my workspace, right? Like, hopefully copy and paste is not above anyone's head here, okay? Yeah, it's easy. No, it's not. Nothing's easy. Not even copy and paste. But let's take a look at my CS Proj file. And if you're not familiar, there's tons of stuff that can go into a CS Proj file. But what we're particularly interested in are the packages that we're adding to be made available to us in the CS files as we're running code. And in this item group section that starts on line 7, I've got a couple of things here. I've got a package reference. Come here. Package reference on line 8 to PowerShell standard.library. Does that look familiar to anybody? Yes, yeah, it looks familiar to people. Okay, feedback, good. And that is put in there because I ran that .NET add package PowerShell standard.library, and it automatically did that for me. However, this you didn't make me.dll doesn't exist on a NuGet repository that I have added to my computer. And now what I could do is create a local NuGet repository and mess around using NuGet.exe, or you could probably do it through the .NET executable as well. Or you can just reference a local file too and say, here's another package. The syntax is a little different. It's a reference include instead of a package reference include. And you have to provide it this hint path to tell it where the DLL is. But then, after you do that, now you can come up here and go using and it even auto-completes. Isn't VS Code smart? You didn't make me, right? Let's open that back up just to sake of completion there. And so now I should probably get to using it. And so I've been very lucky. My devs don't hate me. They've given me documentation on how to use this thing. They've given me examples in C# that I'm not showing you because I'm about to just write it out on the screen. But there's no PowerShell examples, so that's why we're here. I'm going to go, what do I want to do? I want to go protected, override, void, process record, just like we did last time, right? I'm just creating the process block for my cmdlet. You've seen this already. It's all fresh in your minds. Nobody's that hungover they forgot already. And I'm going to go, I need to go make my code. And so I'm working from the example that you can't see, and go var secret code equals. And then I know that in this you didn't make me thing that there's a fun codes object that I can instantiate. And I know that it's static, so I can go dot secret code. And IntelliSense really helped me out there, right? And I could go, you didn't make me dot. And I can see, oh, there's fun codes, so I can go dot fun codes. And like, what's in here? Oh, it's probably that, so I can go and start declaring some stuff. And now I'm out of I'm not executing good syntax, so IntelliCode doesn't like me anymore, or IntelliSense. But I've worked from my example, and I now have a secret code out of my fun codes thing, right? Everybody relatively clear on where this fun codes thing came from? That's not native C#. It's not part of the PowerShell stuff. I got that from You Didn't Make Me, and I'm just loving the naming convention that my in-house development team used for it. And so now, like, this was really simple in such that it's not doing a whole lot. It's just accessing that DLL. It's that I added to my project. I'm just got a using statement here, and then I'm instantiating a new fun codes object, and I'm extracting the secret code from it. Because as soon as you construct one, or sorry, rather it's a static method, you just go get the secret code. And I'll go write object secret code. That's not ominous when like 10 people's phones go off. Yeah. So that's all I really want to do here. So let's fire up my terminal and go .NET build. See if I typed everything correctly. So far, so good. And if I go import module, bin, debug, net standard, oops. Import that DLL, and I go get secret code. There it is.
Can you put that to a GM? Does that give you a secret code object, or is that just a string?
This should just be a string, because I've the secret code is a string, and you know, maybe it should be a secure string, or maybe it should be something that isn't just piped out to your screen at all. But again, the point here isn't how to handle secrets or sensitive objects in C#. The point is to show you how to use DLLs that you didn't create and that you don't have the source for.
But if the object were a complex object, you would be getting a complex object here?
That's right. Yeah. If I hadn't just got a string out of this, I would have got like a real object, right? And so, sorry?
Is there a begin record and end record like you have for line 10 for the process?
Yeah, so I could do, what is it, protected, override, void, begin processing. And maybe that's where I want to instantiate the thing, and then I want to use it inside of here or something. And there's the one that corresponds to the finished. But look, I can continue accessing my hyper-secure environment and getting totally unique tokens that definitely aren't just GUIDs. Yeah.
Does this, anytime you use C#, does it automatically make it commandlet binding, so like all the verbose and debug options and stuff like that are available?
Yeah, like this is all available to me already. I could do something like something super useful like that. And so this is a good example. Like, can I just import this again? I got to build it again. And you know what else? It's going to, here's something fun. I'll show you what breaks. .NET build. I kind of spoiled it. This is going to not work. And the reason that this is not going to work is because I imported the thing that I'm trying to build. And it's going to go, I am sad. That's what this all says. It says, I'm sad. It says, I'm sad 6 times as a warning. And then it doesn't work, right? And so what do I need to do? I need to get rid. The easiest thing to do is just dump this PowerShell process and then recreate it. And then just say .NET build. And then it works again.
Just to clarify real quick, it's the commandlet class that gives you it's just like using commandlet binding inside of PowerShell.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, that's right. It comes from this on line 7. And if I go run it again, I should import it. Yeah, and I get my verbose stuff. And yeah, that's correct, where the commandlet binding comes from. So you can write to other streams as well. Cool. All right. There's a video you'll be watching if I had failed to remember how to do that. So let's do even more stuff. Let's do some more interesting stuff, right? Like those were relatively straightforward examples, right? Like it was a hello world, which is about as basic as it gets. Well, although we had a parameter and a ternary expression. And then we used somebody else's DLL, which is probably way more interesting than the code that we wrote. Like we only wrote like 2 lines of functional code in there. And whereas that DLL probably like 2,000 lines, I bet. Whoever wrote that's probably really smart. But one of the things that I kind of touched on as we were going through the other slides in the introduction was some of the quote-unquote things that are easier to do in C# than PowerShell. And one of those things is multi-threading. You guys, I already asked you, like, who's tried to multi-thread something in PowerShell? Those of you who have tried, would you describe it as a particularly exciting and rewarding experience? See you live, no. Would you describe it as something that's certainly possible, but not really seems like PowerShell's not really built for that? Yeah? Would you describe it as just like the worst thing in the world? It's like slamming your hand in a car door? Not that bad? Okay, yeah. Sometimes. Depends on how creative you're trying to get. So let's take some of the hurt out, shall we? Multi-threading. It's just like a cooking show. What I've prepared for you earlier was put it in the oven and then take it, oh, it's already done. Okay, I've got another project. This one, the CS Proj file. This is what it looks like when you don't have an external dependency and you've just done the add package command, right? It looks almost exactly the same, except it doesn't have that you didn't make me stuff. Got my global JSON. Got my .cs variable here. And in here, notice it's not a get. I'm using the lifecycle verbs. I'm using an invoke. When should you use invoke? Like, I know there's a real answer, but genuinely, you know when you should really use invoke? It's when you don't know what other verb to use. Right? Like, there's no, like, I'm sure, like, oh, you ask the people who made it, let's go get Bruce or Jeffrey and tell them when you should really use invoke, but, like, when should you really use invoke? It's just when you can't use another one. And so I'm making invoke multi-threading. It inherits from the PS Cmdlet class. I've already written myself a process record here. You know what I'm going to do? Change my bracing style to fit the rest of the document. And to do a code. OK, I know exactly what I need to do. So we're talking about multi-threading. So the first thing I'm going to do, just to kind of help illustrate the example, because otherwise it's kind of hard to get your head around like how long something takes to run, I'm going to do a write object, and I'm going to go started and datetime dot now. And what that's going to do is it's going to write a string out to my output stream of, it's going to start with the word started. It's going to be super easy to identify. You're all going to be like, there it is, and you're going to know exactly where it came from. And it's going to write out the current date and time of just when this line of code executes. Right? Okay? Mind's blown? Yes, totally. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add a couple more things here. Using system.threading, using, oops. And these are things that will be helpful for us as we begin to do our multi-threading. And before I start writing more of my process block, I'm going to do, and again, it's not necessarily the greatest practice in the world, but it's what I'm showing you, so you're going to learn it. Public int long running task. What do you think this is going to do? Probably going to run for a while, right? And it's going to take a parameter called number, and it's going to be a long-running task, right? I guaranteed it. It's going to sleep for 5 seconds. And then it's going to return the number that you passed it. Super valuable. Everybody take a picture of this and take it home because it's very critical. Use it in prod every day. If any of you are like, have performance tuning-based metrics, just add a bunch of sleeps to your code. And then, oh yeah, this sprint, all I did was improve the runtime of this module. I just make your performance review go easy, right? So this long-running task is a method. It's like a function. It's called a method because it's in C# land. And it's called long-running task. It's going to return an integer, and it's going to take in an integer. And so the integer it returns is the integer it receives. All right? And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do like that comment instructed me, and I'm going to do a code. I'm going to go var task1 equals task.run. Oops. All right. So what I've done on line 15 is I've basically just created a new task using this system.threading.task stuff up here. And this is going to execute this long-running task in a thread that doesn't block the one that's running the rest of my stuff, right? And so a little bit of weird syntax here that I'm not going to go over, but this is all just running this long-running task method and passing it a parameter of 1. So what's it going to give back? It's going to wait for 5 seconds, and then it's going to return 1. Wow. And multi-threading isn't really that fun when you only have like one long-running task going on. So I'm going to duplicate that line. And I'm going to change this to task 2. Make a 2. You know, I'm even going to do, because I'm just so confident, we're going to do a task 3. And so if we were writing PowerShell code, which we obviously aren't, you would kind of go, okay, so you're executing this line by line, and the system threading stuff is not really that simple in PowerShell. So you're probably looking at a 15-second execution for this task, right? We're running the thing that sleeps for 5 seconds. We're running it 3 times. But we know, because I told you, these are all running in threads that aren't going to hurt my overall runtime like that. So what I need to do is tasks wait all. And what that's going to do is it's going to wait for all the tasks that I started to complete. And so it is going to block this until all the tasks are done. So if these execute sequentially, this wait all is going to make me wait for 15 seconds. And I tell you, it's going to be so awkward as I just stand up here for 15 seconds. It's going to feel like way longer than 15 seconds, I'm telling you, okay? Especially while you're waiting for it. And then for closure, I'm going to do write object finished. Okay? And so we're writing out the date and time that we started, and we're writing out the date and time that we ended. So hopefully the date's the same. But the time, if everything went right, should only be 5 seconds later. And if things are not being multi-threaded, just to prove the concept, it's going to be super awkward as I kill 15 seconds on stage, and it'll be 15 seconds shown to us on the screen. So I'm going to do a .NET build. And then I'm going to import the module. Leslie. And I'm going to go invoke multi-threading. That was weird. What happened there? Finished immediately. Oh, you know what I do need to do? I'm going to go, they can't be done already. I'm going to go var output equals output plus, I'm going to task 1 dot result, whatever came out of that, plus a space, let's keep it like that, plus task 2 dot result, plus a space. And then I'm going to,
So that result is the return from that function?
yes, I was just about to cover that. I'm so good at typing and talking at the same time. So yeah, what I've done here, and it scrolls off screen, but I think you get the idea. I've created a new string here, a new variable, and it's just going to be the output, and then it's going to be the result of task 1, the result of task 2, and the result of task 3, because it didn't come anywhere else. It got swallowed by these task variables, right? So I'm going to kill that. We're going to import again. That looks better. Started. Come on. Oh, that was better than having to wait 15 seconds for it, wasn't it? So started at 9:49:27, and it Then it gave me my output, the 1, 2, and the 3. You guys know where that came from, right? That came out of this long-running task that we did. That's the only place it could have come out of, right? And then it finished the same day, impressive, 5 seconds later. Yay. Question, yeah.
Write object, is that the equivalent of PowerShell write output?
Yeah, insofar as it writes to the output stream. Everybody okay? Question, yeah? Yeah, like if I'm not doing anything with it, it's just saying, okay, you're done. Like you don't need to wait for any of these results. You're just free to move on. There's no dependency on the output from that stuff. PowerShell would make you wait anyway, right? Yeah. Instead, C# just scares the crap out of you and goes, you're done. And you go, what the heck are you talking about? So. Yeah, there's a lot of alternatives for things that you can do here. And like there's lots of different ways to do multi-threading as well in C#. Like this is just one solution that kind of looks nice on the screen because the whole thing only takes up 33 lines. You could use run spaces if you wanted. You could use semaphores. You could do a whole schwack of other stuff. But this is kind of the simplest for a lot of people to kind of get their heads around when they're first getting started, right? So we're doing great on time, which means, oops, we can do the demo that I wasn't sure we'd have time for.
Write object, what happens if
If that's a collection? I don't know. Let's find out. Isn't that the best way to learn? By trying? So if I take out this output, I'm just going to write. Actually, you know what? We'll look at collections in 1 second here. Because the demo that we could have cut was on link. So I'm going to add this link example here and taking my scaffolding with me. And I don't need that. And I don't need. Oops, that was holding shift. Don't need that. Don't need that. Change this to link. Whoops. Change that to link. Type it correctly the first time. All right. So I've just very sloppily set up a new CS file in the same project, and I've named it Invoke link, and I've added this link. I've done this using system.link expression at the beginning here. Who knows what link does? A couple of hands. More or less, it makes working with collections of objects happier. And you're going to see in this example, I could have done that using select object and where object. And you'll be right, because these are simple examples, right? But link is super powerful and in some cases, in most cases, more performant than piping stuff into where object and select object and sort object and stuff like that. And it's normally fewer lines of code when you're doing more elaborate expressions as well. And so this is just going to be a quick little tour of some of the things you can do with link. Not necessarily all the things you can do with link or all the things that you should do with link, but let's get at her. I'm in my process block again. Like I could do some of this outside the process block, but I'm choosing not to. And I'm going to go var list1. This is going to be a collection mark, don't worry. And I'm going to go enumerable.range. So what this is, oh, and I want to do a toList. So what this is doing is it's going to create a new list of integers, not an array, not an array list, but like a list. This is a object. This is a type of collection that you don't normally see people write in PowerShell, but it is pretty objectively better than the types of collections that you normally see in PowerShell. I'm sure if they had it to do over again, syntax like this, where you go, redo that. Obviously, this is not going to be happy in my C# project. Dollar thing equals at brackets. I bet, I'm not sure, but I bet if they had that to do over again, they would make that a generic list or something. But they didn't. So next thing I'm going to do is make another list. And I'm going to start this one at 5. And so the other thing I'm using here is this enumerable.range. That's going to create me basically a range of numbers. And it takes 2 arguments. This is saying start at 1, and then give me the next 10 numbers, and then turn that into a list. And this is going to say start at 5, give me the next 10 numbers, and then turn that into a list. Or sorry, give me 10 numbers starting at 1. Give me 10 numbers starting at 5, not and then give me. And so I'm going to get, in this one, a list that goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably. And the next one I'm going to get one that goes 5, and so on. And the next one I'm going to get a list that just starts at 5 and then goes for 10. Okay? Everybody happy? Yes? Good? And now let's start using some of the link stuff. Let's go var only 1. And I want to get the numbers that are only in list 1, not the ones that are in list 2. And you would go, I can do that in PowerShell using where object. I can write a filter script that does that. And you're right, you can. Or you can use a link expression. You can go list 1 except list 2. And that's going to give me all the numbers that are in list 1 that aren't in list 2. And likewise, I can go and get the numbers that are in list 2 but not in list 1. Right? That's interesting. You could do that maybe with something a little more elaborate than numbers. You can do that in a way where this isn't just as straightforward as you're seeing it here. You could do more elaborate objects that you're trying to separate into different collections. But there's more. We can go list, var. What do we want to do? Let's go in both. List 1. Oops. It's lowercase. Case sensitivity matters here. List 1. Union. List 2. Oh, yeah, and that's not what I want. You know, let's make this all unique. Union is going to give me all of the objects in both of these lists, but it's going to give me a unique list. So that's going to be like piping into select object dash unique, except you're not going to pay the pipeline tax for doing this. So perhaps this is more performant than what you're doing with select object. Or maybe it's just a list of numbers and it's going to perform about the same either way. But maybe this is like a list of 500 million objects, and all of a sudden trying to put those through the pipeline matters a little more than it used to, right? And so let's do in both, like I was going to do. You go list 1. Oh, I forgot my equals. List 1 dot intersect list 2. And so this except, like I kind of mentioned, is going to go get me all the stuff that's in list 2 except the stuff that's in list 1. Cool? The union is joining these two collections together, and it's implied that you understand that it's going to return unique objects. This intersect is saying basically, give me all the stuff in list 1 that intersects with the stuff that's in list 2. Everybody just trust me. We don't need to run it, do we? No, OK, let's run it. Let's go write object, and let's go list 1. And I could just go, let's just try this first to satisfy the question from earlier. And let's just go with this one, plus. And let's just run this first, right? Like this isn't testing all the stuff that we made. This is just showing what happens when you write that list out. do a .NET build. And let's go import module bin debug net standard multi-threading. Because this is still the multi-threading project, right? Like just because I'm doing the link stuff, I'm still in this multi-threading namespace. I'm still in this multi-threading project. This is all being wrapped up as one module. And again, one of the things I'm not doing, wouldn't it be cool if I had like a PSD1 in here that told you like the commandlets that I was exporting and maybe had a copyright and stuff like that. I'm also obviously not doing comment-based help, which you can do in here. There's just a different syntax I'm not sure we'll get to. But I'm going to import that whole module, and if I do a get command on that module, I've got invoke link and I've got invoke multi-threading. So invoke link. Handy, right? That's what you wanted. You wanted the name of the type of object. And doesn't that kind of remind you of PowerShell in a way? Where when you like just take like a hash table or an array or something, and you just, well, not an array, it'll figure that out, but like a hash table where you put it just in quotes inside a string, and it just tells you system.collections.hashtable, and you're like, no kidding. Right? So we need a more elegant solution, or more realistically, a more complicated solution. So what I'm going to do is, because I still want it labeled list1, what would you do in PowerShell? Parentheses around it. Maybe you would use a join to get it all on one line, especially because we're going to be doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these, and I don't feel like scrolling that much on a touchpad. So I'm going to join stuff. Like in PowerShell, you go dash join, and then you go, wait, it's not PowerShell. So we're going to go string dot join, and that's a method that we can use. And it tells me, oh, what do I need to do? Because you would normally go, I'm going to put the collection and then join and then the thing that I want it to join on. And then you would look at this and go, wait, it's backwards. I need the separator first, which is going to be a comma and a space. And then the enumerable thing. What is the collection? And I'm going to go list 1. So I'm taking all the stuff in list 1 and joining it using that as a separator. And to save a little time, let's also do 2. And let's also do, what was this one? This one was, actually, you know what would be easier? And less prone to typos. You guys know about like this multi-cursor stuff in VS Code? Yeah. There's a different shortcut. I think it's Control Shift Alt, and then the arrow keys will do like a block selection. Control Alt up and down. Yeah, I've changed mine just to Shift Alt, which is what it is in a lot of other places. But you can do like what I'm doing here and select a block of code and start typing and overwrite it there. So that's kind of handy.
You also hit A, and it'll take you to different lengths. So if you have different lengths, it'll take you to one.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, let me find an example here. So like if I start at this line and I go like that, watch where my cursor goes. I'll go control arrow, and it goes just to the end of that word, even though they're at different columns. And then control arrow to the other side of the equals, and you can kind of see it moving through here. Even though they're not lined up in a column anymore, it's still just sorting it out for me, which is nice.
There's another way to do it too, based on a selection, but I can't remember what that is.
Yeah, there's a few ways to get to that output. I highly recommend, again, this is a little off topic, but we're doing pretty well. Go into,
It's Shift-Alt-A. So if you select the block, Shift-Alt-A, it gives you the multi-cursor.
if I do this, I'm going to go Shift-Alt-A. Comments it out for me. But I've screwed with my bindings, and just to show you, you can go into your keyboard shortcuts and look at them all. And you can even go, I don't know what's happening when I hit Shift-Alt and then my arrow or whatever, or page down, or what, and it'll search the key bindings. Or you can go, how do I do like multi cursor, toggle the multi-cursor modifier, etc. So that's a bit of an aside. Maybe you already knew that about VS Code. Maybe you didn't. And then what are the other ones I need? I need one for all unique. Whoever's next door is just killing it. And both.
Should we do it louder?
Do you guys want to compete? No, let's, here. Okay, well, if this works, it's going to be a big deal. You're all going to applaud, right? Okay. Let me bring this back. Let me get rid of that. Let me bring it back again. And go .NET build. And, you know, if I remembered how to do this all right by memory and I didn't screw it up, it was actually kind of impressive. Import my module and do an invoke link. And so what I've got here, I told you the truth. I got in list 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Starts at 5, goes to 14. Only in 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's right, because as soon as we hit 5, we start overlapping. Only in 2, well, we overlap until we get to 11. All the unique values, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way through 14. And then the ones that are in both, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Yay! Oh, please, please. That'll teach them. But the point remains, this was not super complicated in C#, right? If you know what you're doing, oh, here's all my link stuff. It was just to get all the stuff that was unique to one list, unique to the other list, all the unique values, the values that overlap. Like it's built for you. Yeah.
You did in list 2, 5 to 10, but it's doing 5 through 14.
Which one?
List 2.
Now, line 13 is just 10 numbers starting at 5.
Yeah, sorry, this, I'll explain again. This enumerable.range is going to give you this many numbers starting at number 5. Yeah, so it doesn't give you a beginning and an end. It gives you a beginning and how many you want. Make sense? Yeah.
So, when you import the module, can you have like a class that runs before you're exposing it, like something that actually runs when you import the module?
Yeah, like if I was doing this for real, I'd probably include like a PSD1 and a PSM1 and stuff like that and make like a real module out of it. And then I would have this stuff that goes with it.
I guess I kind of think of like, usually when I read C# is like a startup.cs or something. Is there something that will automatically get executed, or is this only exposing classes?
Genuinely off the top of my head, I'm not sure. I'm certain that there is a way to do that. I'm just, I can't grip it off the top of my head in the moment. But tweet me and we'll figure it out together. Any other questions about like this demo? The next one's fun, so you might not want to know. What's your, sorry?
This is pretty internal C#y stuff. Is there a way that you can expose other PowerShell commandlets within the C#, or is that?
Like if I wanted to use like a PowerShell module that I'd written or something like that, you can do it, but it's not necessarily the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. And in fact, why? Are there any other questions about this first? No? Why don't we show you a great example of how C# and PowerShell work together. Not by watching the video that you would have seen if I had just fallen dead on stage. But let's add something stupid to PowerShell core. Don't you want to do that? Like, you remember yesterday, everybody stayed and listened to like all of the keynote talks that we had, where they showed you how valuable the community was to PowerShell, right? And they thanked those people for going and triaging issues and adding pull requests. And like, who remembers the percentage for how many of the PRs against the PowerShell repo come from the community? How many was it? 50? Over 50, right. That's a lot. And you know why that matters? Is because, honestly, the PowerShell team's not huge. You would think, like, oh, it's a room full of people like this who are all like really smart and nerds in front of a laptop, open office, right? Like, just like this. and they all just write code all day. No, it's not. Like, you can count them on both hands kind of thing of the people who work on this product that we all love and depend on. And so they really depend on the community for contributions, and that's why PowerShell Core has been such a success. So let's join the club. And now after this, you'll all be able to join that club. I'm going to go. And it's going to work. Aha. So quit spoiling it. By the way, if you wanted to find out how to make cool prompts like this without pulling any external dependencies, I've got another session this week, Thursday afternoon, on how to build neat crap like that. It's a little bit less formal than this. But this is about as formal as I get. So let's take a look at the folder I just opened, shall we? It's big. Does this look familiar to anybody? What's this look like? It's the PowerShell repo. This is the code that you get when you do a git clone, https://github.com/PowerShell/PowerShell, whatever the rest of it is, .git. And it's got assets. Not interesting today. Demos, Docker, docs. Docs are probably a good place to go. Source. And it's also got like a build.psm1. So we're probably not going to run just .NET build on this. We're going to use the build tools. And if you want to get started with this, if you want to get to the point where I'm at right now, basically, where I've just got it all ready to build, there's excellent docs on the website. If you go, see if I can pull it up on the fly. .com/PowerShell. Go to there. It is Chromium Edge. Guess what? It actually works really well because it's just Chromium without a lot of the Google stuff pulled out of it.
It's Chromium except faster because
Yeah.
it's not sending stuff home to Google.
And I know, like, I work for Microsoft, right? So it's pretty natural that I'm going to try it. I highly recommend it. It's pretty neat. I'm using Chrome extensions in Chromium Edge, but I can also use Edge extensions, which is handy if you've used both. And like, one of the things I'm using is this dark reader thing. Look at this, GitHub dark theme. You know how to do that? I don't, so I use the dark reader thing, right? I could turn it off, and oh, I hate myself. Or I could turn it back on, and now it takes a crack at making a dark theme. And so anyway, if you come down here, there should be contributing, developing and contributing. Please see the contribution guide, etc. We can go in there. And it's going to tell me intro to Git and GitHub, good place to start. Quick start checklist, make sure you've done this stuff. Get familiar with the repository, have fun, good luck. It's big. Contributing to issues, contributing to docs, contributing to code. Use VS Code. You can build PowerShell. This is how you do it, etc. So you can see somebody has gone through a lot of trouble to write excellent getting started documentation that takes a lot of the what the heck and why the heck out of getting started with developing the PowerShell project. And so because I know where I'm going to expand the source folder and navigate immediately to the PSD1 for the Microsoft.PowerShell.utility module. Things get weird at big resolutions. If I do a get module, let's do get module. I've got, just by default, I just reloaded the session. I got my chocolatey stuff. You guys should check that out if you haven't. Shout out to Stevie. Microsoft.PowerShell.management and Microsoft.PowerShell.utility, and then PS read line, right? I haven't loaded anything in here. So this is just what comes when you start having fun with PowerShell. So I'm going to go to, if I can find it again, the PSD1 for that module. It's just another module, right? So it stands to reason that it would have a PSD1. And it works better when it's not gigantic. Control J. Somebody has added something suspicious. You guys see that? Yeah, it looks like you'd want it in PowerShell Core, right, too. This, ladies and gentlemen, is core functionality that you can look forward to. No, I'm just but this is the only change to this file that I've made. And I can make this change because I cloned the thing locally, right? I've made get-catfact. So you know what I should probably do now? Make a commandlet that gets a cat fact. And so I didn't have the self-confidence to write this in front of you all live, so pardon me for that. But I'm using some of the networking stuff, using some JSON stuff. I'm making a class for cat facts, because this is a real project, and so we don't want to just futz around with some strings. It's going to have a fact and a length, because that's what the API is going to give me. It's going to create a new cat fact. This is a constructor. We haven't talked about those yet, but if you've developed classes in any language, you may be familiar with the concept of a constructor. It's how you create a new cat fact, in this case. It's going to make sure that the length of the fact that we got matches the length that it says it should be. Why? Well, because sometimes the API that I've chosen screws up. It gives you a fact that's not as long as it thinks it is, and it's a big mess. So we'll throw an error in that instance. And we're not doing C-sharp, or we're not doing PowerShell stuff yet. Like, this isn't a commandlet. This is just a class. But if we get a bad fact back from our API, we're going to throw a fact wasn't the length specified error. Otherwise, we're going to make a new fact that says fact and length, right? OK. And now, my pride and joy, my baby, no, just a commandlet called get-catfact that has a help URI of catfact.ninja and an output type of catfact. And it's going to inherit the get-catfact command. It's going to inherit from PS-commandlet. This is all stuff that we've pretty much seen. Like, the output type is new, but you're familiar with that kind of thing from PowerShell, not blowing any minds, right? Get-catfact is going to do a fact URL. This is the API that we're hitting. And it's going to do a few things that, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure are necessary because I stole this code from someone in this room. Stevie, thank you. I modified it a little bit so that it worked. It was in progress. It's not his fault. But yeah, thanks. I hope you help me in the future. Yeah. But I'm just creating a new HTTP client. Like, this is where you might go, man, this would be so easy in PowerShell. I could do an invoke REST method, hit the thing, and be good. Yeah, maybe. But it wouldn't be in PowerShell Core if you did that. So let's get at her. Some cool stuff to the headers. We're setting our user agent, and we're going to go get string async off of the fact URL, converted to a URI. And then we're going to output the result into the result variable. This is all like 41 through 46. It's all just it's hitting that API, basically, right? Easy enough to read. And then we're going to construct a new cat fact of type cat fact from the deserialize, basically converting that to JSON. Because it's going to give us back basically a big string. And we're going to say, hey, that string is JSON. And I know that because I've examined the API and read their docs. And so I need to convert that to JSON, or to an object, really, that I can work with, and return it. That's what get-catfact does. And then my process record, the process block itself, is going to get a new list of cat facts. In this case, it's just going to get one cat fact. And it's going to isolate the fact variable, or the fact property, I should say. You guys remember, because it comes back with a fact and a length. We just want the fact, because who cares about the length? We just use that for troubleshooting. And then we're going to write it out to the output stream. And then life will get fun. Because I'm going to go import the build module. And then go start, ps, build. And this will take a long time compared to the ones that we were making. And it's almost like this is a much bigger project than the ones that we were working on, and that it's kind of hard to get familiar with. And so most people, and maybe that even includes people on the team as well, are pretty familiar with some areas of the language. Like, not everybody works on all the stuff, and that goes also for people in the community, like Mark, who was pointed out rightfully yesterday for his excellent work on the web commandlets. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, not an expert in the parser as well. Exactly. If you couldn't hear him, he said, heck no. People who are super smart about how the tokenizer and everything works, not necessarily super familiar with all other areas of the project, right? That's kind of makes sense for how a big project works. So as you're diving in, yeah, it looks kind of hard to get started with. But that's okay, because you have time. And I encourage you, once you start kind of looking through some of the parts, like, stay away from the tokenizer and the parser and stuff unless you're a masochist. Like, you guys remember yesterday Joel, who got one of the community awards, Joel? If you want to hire him, go to hirejoel.dev. If you want to hire Joel, yeah. But if you want to be like Joel, dive right into the tokenizer and the parser and really regret your life decisions. Or you can do something smart like, hey, there's this commandlet that doesn't work like I think it should work, so I'm going to go try to improve that. So you can come try to find where it is. Like, you can look through the list here as we're looking through the utility thing, where I've added my getcatfact.cs. You can also see here's where the enable and disable PS breakpoint commandlets are. Here's where the CSV commands are. Here's where convert to HTML lives. I bet this is where the web commandlets live. You want to go screw with Mark stuff? I don't. But you can get started in such a way that doesn't have to be all at once, right? It'd be like drinking from a fire hose, not that fun. So this is finished building, and all I saw was green and white text, so it must have worked. And I'm going to run this version of PowerShell that I just built, right? Like, I just built a version of PowerShell. I'm going to run my only exists on my laptop version of PowerShell, because I forgot to do a git push. I'm going to do run. So this get ps output just tells you where the thing you built lives. Like, this is where I stored my PowerShell repo, and then this is the path to the built executable. And I'll go I haven't rebased in a while, so it's a little out of date because I was afraid of breaking my demo. But this doesn't look like a regular version of PowerShell, does it? This doesn't look like a regular version of PowerShell, does it? I have all my basic modules. There could be nothing fishy or weird or entertaining going on with this version of PowerShell that I've built right in front of you. Let's just take, we got time. Let's go git command module Microsoft PowerShell.utility. Let's just look. I just have a gut feeling. Let's look at the get, the ones that start with get. Oh, looks pretty normal. Variable, type data, breakpoint. Do you trust the Wi-Fi as much as I trust the Wi-Fi? Oh, that was a bad one. Try again. Hey, a female cat is called a queen or a molly. But you didn't know that. If you learned one thing at this session, take back to you in your job, a female cat is called a queen or a molly. Want to go again? There are approximately 100 breeds of cat. Did you know that? I didn't know that, and I love cats. Cat lover is called today I learned I'm a word I can't pronounce. What last one? Oh, okay, second to last one. Okay, cafe. Tigers are excellent swimmers and do not avoid water. So if you're ever being chased by a tiger, you're screwed. You're not going to outswim it or outclimb it, you're just daft. But the other important thing to see what's going on here is the API that I chose was really simple to work with, but also sometimes gives me back bad data. And that's why we're getting value cannot be null. Parameter name fact wasn't the length specified. Does that look familiar? Fact wasn't the length specified. Argument null exception, right? Value cannot be null. Argument null exception. Parameter name, etc. Pretty cool. So all that's left for me now is to add some unit tests and then create my pull request. Tyler, that'll be fine, right? You can help me get that approved today? Yeah. Maybe I should pick an API that's a little more reliable. But that's how you can add not only stupid things, that censored word is things. That's how you can add stupid fun stuff to PowerShell that you maybe distribute in-house. That's how you can give back to the community that's given me, and probably all of you, so much by helping improve the product that we all depend upon and came to a conference to talk and learn about. So I highly recommend check it out. You don't have to be a rock star dev who bought a shirt that says dev on it, or an imposter that bought a shirt that says dev on it, to go contribute to this project, or any other C# project, or to write C# commandlets that exist just in-house for you. There's the video you would have watched if I had decided not to do this because I got bored. And that is basically my session. So I'm open to questions. You can find me on Twitter. The other links there are very fun for you as well. One thing I do want to point out real quick, the PowerShell Discord and Slack, those aka.ms links, I highly recommend you check that place out if you're looking for like-minded individuals who enjoy PowerShell. It's a very welcoming and helpful community. It's full of people that just seriously sit around all day and do nothing but try to help you and come up with ideas for new PowerShell-related stickers. It's a great place to be, whether you like Discord or Slack. I'm a Pluralsight author. I've written some books as well. If you want to learn about Azure automation, go check out my Pluralsight courses. Otherwise, thank you very much for spending an hour and a half with me talking about C# and PowerShell commandlets. I hope that you have learned something valuable that you might bring back with you to work. Otherwise, I hope you were at least entertained a little bit. Thank you again for coming.